If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankies Pod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Tonight I'm talking to Phill Barwise. Phill joined the RCT in 1992. It then became the RLC. But one of the reasons I've got Phill on tonight is he's also got a podcast as well called Guys Talking. See, I said it right.
I've just separated them, Andy.
Yeah. I was actually thinking of it when you said it. Yeah. Hiya, Phill. How are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Just to add context to that, I'm glad that you separated Guys Talking from Guy Stalking, because that's a completely different podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a website to look at. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'll subscribe. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So for you, it's the same as everybody else. It's the 5 questions. Where did you grow up? Why did you join the military? What was it like? Why did you leave? And what have you done since? And I'm looking forward to that bit because I'd like to see how you got into that as well. So if you just want to give us a start with where did you grow up and why did you join the military?
Okay, stand by. I'm glad you sat down.
I am.
I'm from Blackpool originally, and I grew up in Blackpool all through the first 18 years of my life. Blackpool's full of temptation. You know, it's great for a stag do, great for a weekend away. But can you imagine growing up around all of that? You're talking fruit machines, sex, drugs, rock and roll, everything in between. It's hard to keep all of those temptations away from you. So as I got into my early teenage years, I did very well. I went to an all boys school and I was deputy head boy and everyone was proud of me. And then the hormones went into overdrive, didn't they? And the cigarettes came in and the drink came in. And yeah, I'm not proud to announce that I was the very first deputy head boy of my boys' school to have his badge taken off him. But
that's like almost a badge of honour in itself, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Freudian slip there with a badge, but it just got the better of me. So I went to sixth form, didn't last very long there, needed some discipline. And do you know what I did, Frankie? I was reading the Sun newspaper one morning when I'd completely embarrassed myself by putting a window through at my mum's house and thinking I'd lost my key, and then I found it in my jeans the next morning. But I picked up the Sun newspaper and it said that an infantry soldier was earning £13,000 a year in 1992. And they go and play sport and they go and enjoy their life and they're having a great time. And I thought, you know what? If I'm looking for something to do, what a great, I'm addicted to sport, everything about sport. So they were willing to pay me to play sport and everything else that was involved. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to walk down to the local careers office. I had no family involvement in the military whatsoever. An awful lot of people following their grandfather's footsteps and that kind of thing. I had nothing at all. I had no father in my life, no father figure in my life. So I had no legacy to continue. But I walked in there thinking, okay, yeah, where do I play football? Give me my wages and where do I play badminton? And it just so happened that they were on a recruitment drive for drivers in the RCT at the time. So no matter what you walk through those doors aspiring to be, whether you like it or not, that sergeant was going to turn you into a driver in the RCT.
Yeah,
that's what his targets were. So, and would you believe, 5 days later, with my rail warrant in my hand, I was on a train from Blackpool to Aldershot. Yeah.
Talk about flash to bang, Jesus.
5 days later. And do you know what that day was? That was the 1st of April, 1992. April Fool's Day. So I'm on a train with a ridiculous hangover and 20 Barclay in my hand that my sister had given me. I get off at the other end and there's a minibus and a bloke shouting at me. Big, very tash that he's very proud of. And he bundles us 20 or 30 of us into this bus and starts shouting at us. And I went, this must be a continuation of April Fool's. And yeah, but sadly it lasted for another 10 weeks. And that was basic training.
So did you have any idea what to expect?
No, Do you know
nothing.
what?
So
About
it
2 weeks before it, Channel 4 had done a documentary on P Company.
yeah,
And if anybody knows, if you go back to the early 90s, it's probably on YouTube somewhere. There was a documentary on Channel 4 about P Company.
I
And I thought,
remember.
well, any less than that's a bonus. And believe me, it was because the RCT is nothing like the Paras, believe me. But yeah, so I had that. That was the only understanding. When I joined, I didn't know the difference between an officer and a soldier. I didn't know any ranks. I didn't know what the role was. I knew what a driver did, but that was about it. So I went in completely naive, thinking, A, I need some discipline. B, I want my family to be proud of me, and C, show me the good life. But
Yeah.
the next 10
So, I mean,
10 weeks sobered me up there.
you've gone in for the right reasons. You know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, I joined basically because I come from Hartlepool and there's nothing there, and I had two brothers, older brothers in the army, and I think everyone was just expecting me to join. So I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
went with the flow type of thing, and I don't regret it. I wouldn't move back to Hartlepool, not in a month of Sundays. There's not, I've still got family there, but I wouldn't go back. And I don't regret leaving the place. But I was like, I'm very much like yourself, and even though I had two brothers in the military, I knew nothing about it. I think I'd done 2 nights at Army Cadets once, and got slapped off somebody and didn't go back. And I turned up at training, and it was a shock. It wasn't too bad. I mean, our initial things, we were took into the camp. It was very much like yourself. We were all picked up at the train station, bundled into the barracks, into the gym, and everyone sat there. And this major stood at the end of the gym, just ripping into everyone. You're all cunts and this, that, and the other, and we'll make many here and blah blah blah. Apparently, he got a rifting for it afterwards. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard
Probably a medal for it.
yeah, I mean, well, it was 1985, so it was a bit different. And that was it. We've got piled into our training, and junior leaders did a year of it. Had some very, very good instructors for ourselves, and I look back on it, and it was hard. I wouldn't say it was like, there was people who bottled out and left because they couldn't take the discipline and stuff like that. But I didn't find the discipline that hard myself. How about you? How did you find that?
I understood the game very early on.
Yeah.
In terms of basic training, I knew they were trying to break me. And I understood why they were trying to break me. Now, when they're trying to break you mentally and physically, they're trying to find out how you're going to react once they've broken you. You can cower in the corner, you can come out fighting, or you can say, right, I'm going to step up as a man here because you've broken me, but I'm going to show you who I am and what I'm capable of. So I even though I didn't feel like doing it, I understood the game that they were playing.
Yeah.
So in terms of basic training, that was it. One example, you'd come back from a CFT, and you're hot and you're sweaty, and they say, right, we want you outside in 7 minutes in different kit. Now, you're not going to be able to shower in that time. You're going to run upstairs, throw your kit on your bed or next to your bed because you don't want to run your counter pain. And then you put your other kit on, and then you go and hit, they're going to take you to a hot, sweaty NBC lesson for 2 hours, trying to make you go to sleep in an overly heated classroom, aren't they? But they say, right, you've got 7 minutes to get outside. Now you can't shower. And then the one of your team leaders or, corporals come over to you and say, okay, 7 minutes. You haven't showered, have you? Right, get away. And you're off to jail. And so, you know that I haven't been able to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the 7 minutes that you told me to be down in. So you've set a trap. I've taken the bait. Fair enough. I'll go to jail. But you want to see how I react when I come back from jail, or whether I fall asleep in that NBC lesson. And so I got that very early on. But an awful lot of people do fall for the traps, and I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like you said, that's what it's there for. It's that break them down, build them up, see if they can bounce back better. And some people can take it, some people can't. Some people don't get it and they just bundle through. I think that was more or less me. I just went with the flow.
We had some very good troop corporals. The guys that were in charge of our troops, and they used to sit us down at the end of the night and they'd take their mask off, the horrible mask, and they'd become themselves. And would sit down man to man and say, listen, why are we going through this? Why are we doing this? And he'd say, don't worry, mate, just get through at the end. You'll get to your unit, and that's when the nice when the nice life begins. Get your posting to Germany. You'll have a whale of a time. Out in the piss all the time, enjoying yourself. Nice cars. Sparkasse will look after you. Give you 10,000 Deutschmarks. You go out and get yourself an XR2, the life of Riley. That kind of thing. It was so they gave us that carrot at the end of the, because if we didn't know why we were doing it, we would have got broken a lot quicker. But they were very, I don't know whether they were being clever in telling us that, or whether they were just being honest and men and friends doing that. But that inspired me to get through it at the end, because I knew there was something to aim towards.
Yeah.
Get that?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that is quite good if your training corporals to do that. It's also, like you say, it's a bit sneaky, because familiarity breeds contempt and all that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I suppose they might have been looking for people who would try and take advantage of that as well. Maybe, well, you'll always get people who will.
Another great anecdote. We were doing Skill at Arms one night, and they said, "Well, you've got two options, boys. You can read up on Skill at Arms, or do you know what? You got a free night. You can go to the NAFI if you want. Here's a £5 each. Go and get a beer." And that was the test. That was the test. Who went up to the bar and who stayed in and did the Skill at Arms? Now, those lads that went to the bar, I really should have done. I drink far too much beer, but those lads that went to the bar, the training corporals went straight up there, took their names, and then came back the following day. The rest of training was hell for them because they made the wrong decision. The guys who stayed in and did Skill at Arms, guess what? It was a little bit easier. Yeah.
Now imagine if they'd have gone into the NAFI and caught one of them who was sat having a pint with a Skill at Arms book in his hand. Now, that'd have been a clever lad.
He probably fell in between the cracks. Yeah. The conduit between the two.
So did your family notice a big change in you?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you went into training?
Frankie, one of the main reasons I wanted to do it is because I realised that my family weren't particularly proud of me, and I needed to change that very quickly. My mum had sacrificed a hell of a lot in her life for me to be who I was, and I wasn't going to disrespect that. I'd gone off the rails trying out drink and drugs and all the other things that Blackpool threw at me. So I thought, you know what, I need to change me, and the only way I can do it, I haven't got the self-discipline to do it myself, so I'm going to have to get someone to do it for me. Those 10 weeks, you've heard it hundreds of times. Turn the boy into the man, that kind of thing, and it did, because at the end of that, the 10-week period, my mum, my sister, my grandma, anyone else who was alive at the time, they came to see my passing out parade, and it was a different person to the person 10 weeks before that had gone in there, 8 stone dripping wet, and couldn't march for toffee. The next thing you know, I'm on a drill square. Sadly, they made us pass out. The RCT band were there. Everything was fantastic, and they started playing Copacabana by Barry Manilow, and we're supposed to march to that. And Status Quo, You're in the Army Now, had just come out at the time, which was fantastic. It was very topical, and the title is also relevant. But Barry Manilow, now luckily Barry Manilow is one of my mum's favourite artists, and I've been, full disclosure, I've just been to see him in Vegas because we all listen to the music that our parents bring us up on, don't they? But yeah, I was quite confused, and I did look over to the band just for a couple of nanoseconds. I thought, really, Copacabana? I'm supposed to be a man here.
Christ, I can't remember what they played when we marched off, because it was that long ago.
Well, if you passed out to Copacabana, you'd have remembered it.
No, in all honesty, I think it was the. I'm pretty sure it was the Imperial March from Star Wars. When
all right, don't show up.
Inspecting us.
No, you've got Manilow and you've got Star Wars. Right.
So after training, did you go and do your phase 2 then, did you?
No. Yes. I went to Leconfield. That's where all the HGV training's done, and all your off-road training, all that kind of stuff. And that was only for a few weeks. It wasn't very long. We then went back to Buller Barracks in Aldershot, which is where the RCT depot and training was, before it all sort of centralised into Pirbright, didn't it?
Yeah.
Here we all went back to Aldershot with our nice shiny HGV licences, and we got told where we were being posted. We didn't have an option. You're Port and Maritime, you're off to the Tankies. There was none of that. It was, right, you're going there, and I got just like the rest of my life, the cushiest posting in the world. I got 68 Squadron RCT Rheindahl JHQ staff car for a year as a brand new shiny 18-year-old straight off the conveyor belt, and I didn't wear uniform for a year. I was
I would find that quite unusual to give a young sprog the responsibilities of staff car driver.
Well, they shouldn't have done because I was useless. But yeah, I was driving around a brand new Rover 827 Sterling, and I had a brigadier in the back who was a doctor, and I was just taking him from Rheindahl to Cologne for a 2-hour meeting, leaving him there all day, having a walk around Cologne Cathedral, which was absolutely beautiful, by the way. I wish I was a bit older when I was there because I would have appreciated it more. And then just driving back the next day, and that's kind of what my life was for my first posting. I was so blessed because I heard from an awful lot of guys that I joined up with. They're at 1 div and 3 div in Bunda and all these kind of places, and they're getting beasted every day. And there's me walking around in a suit, driving a nice shiny car, doing staff car training with U-turns and J-turns and evasive driving and all this kind of stuff. I felt like James Bond. It was fantastic.
Fucking hell, doing a J10 and 827.
Wow. Yeah. Well, no, they did. They did the naked old Vauxhall Cavalier for that.
Right.
Frankie.
I was going to say, I must admit, I'm a bit jealous. Not for the cushiness of the job. It's just that I've had like 5 Rover 820s in my time, and it's my favourite car. But to have an 827.
Oh yeah.
As
you'll know, the 827, there wasn't a Sterling of that. It was either 820 Sterling or 827. Can't remember what I had now. But do you know what? That posting, I'm going to turn it a little dark here now. Whenever you get to your first posting, that's when you start learning about being a soldier. Those first 10 weeks, they don't teach you a thing. They teach you how to hold a gun or how to march, but they don't tell you how to be a man. When I got to that first posting, I thought I was Billy Big Bollocks. I thought I was great. I've passed out. I'm a soldier. I've got the uniform. I've got the cap badge. Here I go into the big wide world. And it wasn't until I started gobbing off in the squadron bar one night, and then I realised, yeah, actually, I'm still a little boy. I woke up the next day, bungeed to my bed with not a single hair on my body. They had shaved me from head to toe and everything in between. I'm not going to give you details, but there were razor marks everywhere, mate. So I turned up on parade the next day, and my duty sergeant said, "Where's your eyebrows?" And I said, "Never mind that, take my beret off." And while you're at it, have a look down my boxer shorts. There was nothing there. There was nothing there. All because I think I might have been slightly uncomplimentary about Nottingham Forest. And there was a guy from Nottingham in the bar. And I learnt very quickly. I spent 3 months not even sleeping in my room. They'd done a mock-up of my bed space in the corridor outside my room, and even the duty corporals and the duty sergeants and they were all in on it. I had a block inspection, and my room was in the corridor. So, yeah, I learned.
When you look back on that, and you're laughing about it now, and you probably laughed about it then, but at the time, I bet you weren't. I mean,
horrible.
Yeah,
this is gratuitous bullying in the workplace. This is absolutely awful. It turned me into an even better man, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. I spent a whole night in a wheelie bin up a flagpole at -10 in the middle of Germany.
Fucking hell, I've seen some, and I've been under some. Some's happened to me, and I've been involved in doing it to others. Because that's how it was. But I've not had that. I've not heard of that one before.
Oh, I was very cold. I was very cold, Frankie.
I can imagine. I've not heard of that one before.
Well, is it my fault, or did they go too far? And that's the thing. Am I old school and thinking, do you know what, I fucking deserved that because I was an absolute tool at the time, or did they go a little bit too far because that punishment wasn't commensurate with what I'd actually done?
Yeah. I mean, if we look back as older gentlemen, or and think some of the things that happened then. I mean, I joined 7 years before you, and it wasn't that different, between my time of joining and yours. I think the worst things that had happened to us really, as young sprogs in the regiment, is we'd get greased, PX grease all over you and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
hung off the barrel of a gun in a crucifix. That was quite fun. The way when it happened to me, I wasn't overjoyed, but I thought, hang on a minute, I'm going to be stuck up here all afternoon in these coveralls with a pole through my arm like this. They're all painting the floor. I'm not.
At least it means I haven't got to do any work. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably move on to this, but it's particularly relevant to mention it now. When I became the MT rep for the Remy workshops, when I was in Aldershot, I was co-located with the Rekimex. The MT rep and the Rekimex worked together in the sort of co-located area. So as soon as I saw the winch going up on the recovery vehicle, I knew it was someone's birthday.
We look back on stuff like that. I suppose almost with rose tinted glasses, thinking, yeah, it was banter, it was hijinks, or whatever you want to call it. Lots of things, worse happened to some people, but I've seen it to the other extremes as well. Regimental baths and stuff like that.
I had one.
I've seen that happen to people. I spent time in MCTC for going AWOL. And I was AWOL for 6.5 months. Got married and went on the dole. That was great, that was.
You handed in your national insurance number. You were easy to find, weren't you?
No, that's not how they found me. I was doing employment training as an electrician. It was great. I went to Collie, and we had a guy in the room with us who kept basically grassing on everything that happened. Ooh. So the screws, no, you're not allowed to call them that, the staff would know what was happening before it happened. You know what I mean? Type of thing. They knew he had the extra back in his
He's no one's friend, though, is he, that boy?
Well, we found out it was him, and he was dealt with, let's say, rather robustly, and it involved a tube of deep heat.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's what he said. And it stunk. It was horrible. I always remember the smell of it. But he never did it again. And I suppose that's extreme circumstances. But stuff like that happens within regiments and things. And again, you just mark it off as it's banter. It's like you say, it is bullying. It's workplace bullying. It is, but it wasn't considered that then. You wouldn't get away with it now.
Not half. Blind.
You could say that
we shouldn't issue yellow and red cards now, aren't they? For goodness' sake.
Yeah, I mean it's they do reports on iPads at the end of the training day and stuff like that.
I've got a theory, Frankie. Do you want to hear it?
Go on.
I've got a theory. When I joined in '92, there were an awful lot of people that were in the roles of sergeant, staff sergeant, those kind of roles. That if you wind back 20 years before that, they had a choice. They were either going to jail or they joined the army. So rather than going to jail, they joined the army. If you fast forward back to my time, 20 years later, you've got these guys who were largely uneducated, who had two choices 20 years ago to either be incarcerated or join the army. But throughout that period of time, before education for promotion came in, they were largely promoted on time served rather than ability or education.
Yeah.
So now, when I joined, you've now got this top-heavy army of uneducated guys that should really be in jail that were telling me what to do. Now, I like to think of myself as reasonably intelligent, quite logical thinking, even at the age of 18. But I've got a guy who's telling me something that I should be doing that didn't actually make that much sense. So EFP was the best thing to happen to the army, that it weeded out all of these guys that were promoted sheerly because of the time that they were in. There was an imbalance, and it was frustrating because up until I joined just after Q8 91, nothing much happened until Bosnia 95 that I went to. So it was kind of a boring time. We were sort of sweeping the vehicle park and painting the grass green, and is that trailer painted? Right, go and paint it again. So it was a very boring existence in the army. So these guys just got bored, but they perpetuated the bullying that they'd had the years before. Oh, if it happened to me, then I'm going to pass it on to them because it made me a man, so I'm going to pass it on to them. But why not break the cycle, mate? Why not break the cycle and don't bully anyone, but treat them with a bit of respect, and then they'll respect you, and we'll all get along. But if you perpetuate that bullying from the bullying that you had, all we're going to have is this bullying, and then next generation bullying, and next generation bullying. Nobody likes it. So why are you passing it on? It was really, really frustrating. And that I tried to, as a very naive Lance Jack, to become friends with the new guys. But the 18-year-old that was posted in, rather than going and giving him a regimental bath and right, welcome to the fucking regiment, mate, I'd go, do you know what? We're off to the bar tonight. Do you want to come and join us? And I'll introduce you to a few of the lads. I wanted to make that difference rather than the perpetual difference that the bullies had made. But I was a very lone voice in a crowd of bullies.
I agree with you about the guy. It happened to them and this, that, and the other. I've spoken to guys on the podcast who joined years before me and joined not long before me. My brother joined in '79, and when I interviewed him and he told me about some of the stuff that happened to him in training and stuff like that, I was like shocked. I was lucky in that in training and junior leaders for a year. We had some very good sergeants. We had 3 sergeants and a sergeant major over the time. And they were brilliant. They were really, really good with us. And then when I got my unit, I'd done an all-armed clerk's course thinking it'd be an easy job, and I got sacked and sent to the guns as punishment type of thing. Because I was a bit of a bad boy. I'd been in a lot of trouble already within the regiment within about 9 months.
Beer or women or both?
Beer. Beer and beer. There was a lot of beer. It was Germany. Germany in the mid-80s, you know what I mean? There was lots of beer.
X 30 pfennigs a bottle. Oh.
Yeah, I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Got sent to the battery and got put on the crew with the biggest, roughest, toughest ex-commando, scary fucking bloke. Ouch. And his whole crew was like knuckle draggers. I was just like, oh my God, I'm dead. And as it turned out, I fit right in. That's where I should have been to start with, in with the knuckle draggers and stuff like that. And I loved it. And I shone there. I really did well. Because you could get pissed and get into trouble. And it'd just be like, yeah, right, fair enough.
Sounds like Recce Max to me, blimey.
Yeah, there's not much difference between bunnies.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that thing on social media that people have been posting recently that we were the fittest functioning alcoholics? How did I do a BFT in 8 minutes 20?
I've never done.
I was 70%. I was 70% Beck's proof. How did I do that?
I mean, going back to like what you're saying about the bullying and that, and like it was always, it was classed as banter, and it was
banter then bullying now.
Yeah, but I mean, it was it was
always bullying.
Yeah, it was always bullying, but I'm trying to, as one of the guys from that period type of thing, I'm trying to like explain it away or justify it. I mean, I can justify it in a way that I can't.
Frankie, don't try and justify it, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to normalise what made you feel very, very uncomfortable back in the day.
But I get that, and I also appreciate that, when we were meeting it out to people as well, that because we did, it was almost a defence mechanism. Yourself, somebody else is watching, type of thing. There was peer pressure. There was all sorts of stuff like that.
Of course, because if you didn't mete out the bullying, then you were being judged by someone above you. Why aren't you doing that? So it was very difficult to reverse this trend that I was talking about.
And you know, a lot of people who join the military, there's lots and lots of reasons people join the military. But after discussing things with a lot of people over the last year, I've found that a lot of them, and maybe it's just I'm lucky or unlucky, whatever, that the guys who want to volunteer and come and tell their stories on the podcast have got things to say to get off their chest and to explain things. That a lot of them have not. There's a fair few have come from broken families and joined the military for that reason, either to escape from the family or to prove to the family. But there's a lot of people who join the military for that. And I've seen criticism online and people who don't understand. You know, we're not cannon fodder. We're not people who just get drug out the gutter and thrown into the military. You know, all right. The best demographic to draw the military from is the council estate. You don't want soft, woke people because they're not going to run head first into battle. Doesn't matter how much you change, you know, try to train them. That the liberal centrist people would want you to believe that we're all equal. We're not. We're not all equal.
You hit on a great point, though, Frankie. That we're. I think a lot of us were actually searching for a family outside of our family.
Yeah.
You know, some guys grew up with no family whatsoever. I worked out that I grew up with only half a family because I was searching for a father figure all my life. And what better way to do it than go into an army and then hero worship all of your bosses or your peers to a degree. So an awful lot of people are joining the army because they're wanting to find something. It's not just the career. It's not just the war-y stuff. It's not just the sport. It's the the identity, trying to find that thing that you're missing because you feel as though you've got a missing part. But to turn it into a positive, what a brilliant fix that is. You know, because the boys, the banter, the camaraderie, you know, life in the block was probably one of the best times that I had. You know, the parties, the boys getting together. Oh, it's only week 1 of the month. I've run out of fags. Oh, I'll go down and see the G10 Storman because he's minted. I'll go down and see him. Chris Reeves, thank you so much for saving me a lot of times. You know, there's an awful lot of people that will cover for each other. Equally, when I was going through the worst of my bullying, the guys would protect me. They couldn't have done that if we weren't in such close proximity. You know, 2 of the guys even asked to move to rooms closer to me so that they could protect me more from that bullying that I was going through. You know, they went to the quartermaster and they said, "Oh, can I move from this room to that room? I just prefer it down the end of the corridor." What they were doing is they were coming closer to me so that they could hear the knock on my door, when I felt obliged to open that door, and then something was going to happen behind that door. Yeah. Those boys heard that knock, and then they came out of their rooms and went, "Not tonight, mate." You know, and so those. I've turned it quite dark now, but in terms of,
I mean, you've, as we spoke about this before, and I said, before we started recording, I said it's good that when people come on, they start remembering things and stuff like that. You've just triggered something I remember now in my head.
I hope not.
No, it was very similar. We had, let's say, a guy who was in the block, who was renowned for one of the guys who would knock on your door and do fucking unspeakable things to fucking people, really. Just beat the shit out of him when he was pissed. And that bit where it all of a sudden it got switched because I think everybody had had enough. You know, it got to a point where everyone had had enough, and basically he was an old guy. He was like, 22-year gunner type thing. And if you had your stereo on too loud, he'd come down and tell you, he'd give you the warning first. That was nice of him. He'd say, "Turn your stereo down, I can hear it upstairs."
How generous. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he'd fuck off, and you'd think, "Fuck off. Who the fuck are you? Whack, turn it up." He'd come down again. Third time, he'd come down, he'd just pick your stereo up and throw it out the window, smash it. You know, and then you'd fight, then he'd just fucking fill you in. He was a fucking mountain of a man, you know what I mean? But yeah, he was a fucking bully. And then one night he did it with someone, and it backfired. and it was like fucking one of the youngest. Well, I wouldn't say one of the youngest NCOs, one of the youngest junior NCOs in the battery, had fucking just basically had enough and just fucking filled him in.
Ugh.
And then while he was filling him in, everybody else ran out and fucking got the boot in as well. And the guy never did it again. He fucking moved accommodation basically.
It's a really easy thing to say, is that the only way of beating a bully is by standing up to a bully. But you stand there as an 18-year-old against a well-respected sweat of a full screw who's got everyone behind him, and you think, all right, yeah, I'm going to start swinging at him. That's only going to end one way.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to take it. You've got to take it, and that's a very hopeless, defenseless, hollow place to be, isn't it? That's absolutely awful. When you're on your own, you're away from your family, you haven't got any sort of concrete friendships within where you are. You've just been posted somewhere new. You don't know what's happening, and then some bloke starts looming over you saying, "You're my bitch now." Not in that kind of way, but do you know what I mean?
That happened.
I'm gonna dominate you for the next 3 years, and there's nothing you can do about it. And do you know what? I also thought right at the beginning of all this that I like to think that when you volunteer to join the army, that's quite a noble thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Regardless of the reasons why you join, that's actually a very good thing to do in terms of protecting the country and being a noble man and putting yourself second. So why, all the way through the time that you're in the army, do you get shouted at all the time? I felt as though I was being punished for something that I actually thought was quite a nice thing to do in the first place.
I thought of it that way, to be honest.
Why is that happening?
Yeah,
I don't mind.
Break, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Listen, I understand respect. I understand discipline. If you're in an operational tour, you can't have anybody questioning orders. You've got to keep that discipline up. I get that. But this comes back to my other point, that those guys that 20 years ago that should be in jail are enjoying shouting at you. They're enjoying that elevated presence that they have, the elevated rank that they have, that they quite frankly don't deserve. And so they're just milking it. And then they don't know when to stop themselves. And that's when the bullying comes in.
There's another aspect of this as well, I think, and I might be wrong. But in them early days, for me, really, when stuff like that was happening, because you've seen it, because you just accept it as banter and just life in the block or life on the gun park or whatever, you don't appreciate. And again, remember, we're talking years ago, but it wasn't that long ago that, and you'll know this because of your podcast, people don't talk. People didn't talk to each other. Somebody who was getting bullied didn't come up to his mate in the gun park or in the fucking block and say, this is fucking shit. I'm scared to go out my room. Or
you relied on people observing it.
Yeah, but no, that's what I'm saying. That nobody would do that, but nobody would talk about it. And because the general behaviour was just accepted, it wasn't until something extreme happened that it would be reacted to or acted on.
Well, it would always be swept under the carpet as well, Frankie. It wouldn't get to the light of day. You wouldn't say, okay, this happened in the block last night. This was an unsavoury incident, so therefore this shouldn't happen again. Somebody would be spoken to behind a curtain somewhere, and then it'd be brushed under the carpet. It wouldn't be on orders the next day, would it? No. It'd just be, okay, let's try and make this go away quickly as possible and as quietly as possible. And then it'd just happen again because nobody knew about it.
I mean, it'd be the other extreme where, in my day, and I imagine it was in your day as well, do you accept my award or do you want to go on orders? Yeah, and I've accepted many awards, put it that way. Generally, I mean, it fucking happened once. Sorry, do you accept my award or are you going to go on orders? Go on then. And I go, smack, and I'm like, oh, that hurt. And he went, you haven't fell over. Smack. I'm not going to fall over. He was like, right, well, that'll do then. He kind of walked off going, why hasn't he fell over? And I'm just like, fucking head's ringing like this, like. But that got me respect.
Yeah.
I mean, from a very scary guy, that got me a lot of respect, and I got on really well with him after that.
I know we're swapping anecdotes now, but 1994, I found out by phone that my grandma had died, You know, do you remember we were using the old phone cards back in the day before mobile phones? I had one with about £3 on it. So I went and phoned my mum and I said, you know, how's grandma? Sadly, she's passed away. I was 5 minutes late for my guard duty. And he put me on orders, even though I'd explained to him what had happened and the reason I was late. And I was trying to get there as quickly as possible. And do you remember that you're late? You're late for duty even if you're 5 minutes before. And you know, I was like 2 minutes to 8 in the evening, so I wasn't even technically late, but I wasn't there at 5 to. And he put me on orders, and he prevented me from going to a funeral because I was on duties. Yeah, because I was late. Yeah, because he didn't
people like that.
He didn't like me. He didn't like me, so therefore he was gonna go for my soft underbelly, and he went for it twice. He went for it on the day that I found out, and he found out when a funeral was, and went, "You're on duty driver today, sunshine. And there's nothing you can do about it."
What an asshole!
Let's get
back on the timeline then, because we've just gone boof and boof.
Of course we have.
So you got posted to Germany. We've spoke about your regiment and stuff like that. You alluded to earlier about Bosnia in 1995. I went to Bosnia in 1995. Yeah, very interesting time.
It was naughty, wasn't it? It was naughty.
Yeah, it was naughty.
In the words of Uncle Albert, people were going to get hurt over there.
Yeah. I'm starting to rub my hands because it's one of my fucking defense mechanisms side of things. It's the only tour that has ever stuck with me, if you know what I mean.
You must have been front line then, artillery.
I ended up doing a really strange job. For me, we got attached to 19 Regiment. I was 3 RHA then, and we got attached to 19 Regiment and as signallers, and we thought, great, go work the command post or the FDC or wherever, the flight, the fire direction centre, and that'll be great. We'll be doing our job as artillery. It'll be brilliant. And we turned up in Colchester, and they went, right, who's not from third? I went, yeah. Right, your ambulances are over there. We were like, oh, what? Your ambulances? I was like, seriously? What? We were going out as ambulance commanders because they were expecting a lot of trouble. So they beefed up the regimental aid party, or the aid post, to almost a full med section. So we had a full colonel as a doctor. We had lots of TA guys. We had medics from all over the place and stuff like that. And we had
I missed something here, Frankie. You're artillery, yeah?
Yes.
What were you doing driving ambulances around?
I wasn't. I was commanding them.
All right. What were you doing commanding ambulances around?
I haven't got a fucking clue. We had some lads come from the RCT to drive them because they changed us to... When it got a bit naughty and we ended up on Mount Igman, we still had our 110 Land Rovers and the ambulance and stuff like that. But they given us 432 ambulances as well. So we ended up with some guy. We had Saxons as well. What the fuck? It was just mental. It was crazy. But the haunting thing for me about Bosnia, and I've mentioned it in a lot of podcasts that I've done, is one of the reasons it's always stuck with me is you've seen how fucking evil people can be to each other, and it's the neighbours, it's people who live in the same village as them, just because, I wouldn't even put it down to religion. It's about power, and the ethnic cleansing
was genocide.
It was genocide, but it was about power. It wasn't about religion. It wasn't about religion. It was about power. It's, I want you away from this area because we want to take it over. I want you over there.
Modern day Hitler. I don't want that part of society because it's quite frankly in the way of my narcissism. So therefore, I want you out of the way. I'm going to kill you all, and that way I can have this beautiful, perfect life that I've been aspiring to. It's ridiculous.
And some of the things that have stuck with me, that more recently have kept me awake at nights thinking about them, is the fact that sometimes it's not what you see, it's what you see the after effect of. For example, you'll drive through a village and people are waving at you one day, and you go back 4 weeks later and you're driving through and that village is burnt out with no roofs on them and stuff like that, and you know what's happened to the people, and also the frustration of being United Nations troops where you can't just step in and stop things happening that you know is going to happen because you haven't got the mandate to release the fucking wrath of war on the bad boys, and that's frustrating as well. But
Well, to expand that, Frankie, to corroborate your point, we used to go around a place called Bonbon Corner. Do you remember Bonbon Corner? It was called Bonbon Corner. It was like a U-turn of a corner on the way from where we were in Lipper down to, and I'll tell you about Lipper in a minute, down to Split, because that's where we used to get all the supplies.
Yeah.
We'd go down Route Triangle and all that kind of thing. You go around Bonbon Corner. I don't know whether we called it that or whether it was known locally as that. But basically, the kids would congregate, and we would get our sweets out of our ration packs and throw them at the kids.
Yeah.
So at least the kids had some sweets, and the word got out, and so therefore that's where they congregate. Now, our tour spanned UN and NATO.
Yeah.
We were the first unit in the British Army to get 2 medals for the same tour. We got there in March 95 and we came back in 96. We spent 90 days in theatre under 2 different operations. So I got a UN and a NATO medal for 1 tour. Basically.
Yeah, same as me. Yeah.
Bonbon Corner wasn't there when we changed the beret over from the sky blue to the dark blue, because that had been bombed. Basically, or it had been absolutely. So those kids that we were throwing them sweets at every other day, those kids weren't there anymore. And then we were seconded down to, I don't know where we went because it was in the middle of nowhere, and because we were Royal Courier Transport, RLC, wherever it was, we had all these 4-tonners. We'd go down there and we didn't know what the assignment was, but we went down there and we effectively had to bring the troops back crying because they'd been shoveling the bodies into the burn pits. The amount of genocide that had happened at the time, they just had to throw a load of paraffin into this massive big hole in the floor and shovel these bodies in and then set fire to them. And then the people that had done that had to get on the back of our people carriers, and then we'd take them back to their. Now, of course, you've got a secondary and a tertiary element to that, because those are the ones with the shovels. Those are the ones who had to do the physical act. But we had to witness it, and then we had to transport them at the end of it as well. And the smell on their clothes clung to us. It got underneath my fillings. I could taste it for months afterwards. And there are still some smells and tastes now that take me right back to that place. And you know what? I don't know whether you're privileged or not, but that's the first time I've ever said that.
I told you people to relax when they come on here.
Very calming demeanour, Frankie.
I've said
in my podcast, and we will get onto that soon because that's part of the legacy of what we're doing here. But I've said in that I've got so many friends with chronic PTSD. One of the reasons I wanted to do my podcast is to help those guys, and then the wider community beyond that, the circles beyond the circles. And I don't think I've got PTSD or anything. I've got really bad, dark anecdotes that I can tell. But do you know what? As I go on and as we get older and we become more, our personas become more vulnerable, maybe it is affecting me more and more the older I get. Because it's almost like it's a reverse of nostalgia. I believe that shiny pebbles start from big jagged rocks. Big jagged rocks, they get eroded through time, don't they? They go through the water, they go through the smoothing process, and they become nice shiny pebbles at the end of it. But they were still, at the beginning of that process, horrible, hard, jagged rocks. That's the reason that they're there, is because those horrible moments from the very first beginning were horrible.
Yeah.
As time goes on, they do erode, they do shine, and it takes the nastiness from what it was originally. But it's still there, isn't it?
It's still there. I mean, as you know, I don't want to go over my journey again because I've mentioned it many times in this podcast, and I know regular listeners are probably fed up with listening to my story. But we spoke about it beforehand, so you know what I'm on about. So that analogy of the rock, you can put your own outer skin on it. You can cover your shiny rock as paper mache, and that shiny rock inside is your memory. And when you get to that shiny rock and you think everything's cushy, it's okay, I can handle it. But you wish sometimes that paper mache was back around it where you couldn't see that, you couldn't remember that, because it'll get to a point where all of a sudden it will affect you. It might be only in the slightest way. You might just think, "Oh God," a tear might come to you. You might go and have a few more beers too many or whatever. You might just have like you say, a dark thought, a dark memory or whatever, and move on. Some people can't. That happens.
Okay, so
let's
overstretch the analogy just for everyone's sake. Okay, so when something happens to you, you have the ability to put it in a box. You put it in a box in the corner of the room, and you put the lid on it. Nobody knows the tightness of that lid. Sometimes it might come off, and you might uncontrollably look back into the box. But sometimes the lid might be really tight, and that depends on the strength that you have at the time.
Yeah.
The tightness of the lid depends on how strong you are mentally at the time. Sometimes uncontrollably you'll go back and you can't help yourself, but you'll peer back into that box. But sometimes you might think, do you know what? I don't want to look into that box. I'm actually going to walk away from that box, and the lid is tighter and tighter and tighter. The point that I'm making is that the situation, the thing that you've put in that box, is still there. It never goes away.
Never goes away, no.
But it just depends on how tight the lid is. And I think that's the best analogy that someone has ever given to me there. It never goes away. It's still in the box. It just depends on how tight the lid is and how tight your resolve is in not loosening that lid to peer back into it uncontrollably.
I'll add to that as well. We're just going to sit here all night adding on to it. It's got a massive box. So through my counselling, I didn't have one box. I had many boxes. What I should have been doing was keeping them all in one. But all these boxes that weren't big enough for the contents, and because
why separate them? They're all shit. Just stick them in the same one.
But because one box opened, it was a butterfly effect, and it went down it went down that row of the shelf of all the other boxes, and they all popped open at once, and then I couldn't handle them all. And the way I deal, I've learned a coping mechanism for myself. I had one that formed in my own mind where I started a bit OCD. When I was going to think bad things, I'd have to. My head would make me think of something else, and that was: did I leave the gas on? Did I lock the back door? And they became overwhelming that I had to deal with them. And that was part of my mind protecting me from the other bit that was trying to show me the bad things. And then I would deal with that by shouting at myself. And that's how I've dealt with it now. It's great. I know the signs when it's going to happen, and I can stop it happening. So I've been really, really good since, up to now. It's like you say, it never goes away. But again, we've jumped off track again. Let's get back onto.
Welcome to the two-parter.
Yeah. No, these go out as a one. If this is 6 hours long, it goes out like that. The longest one I've done is 4 hours. Yeah, that was an interesting one. That really was interesting. Won't go into that one. Yeah. Right. So you said earlier you were going to mention about where you were at in Bosnia, and you've already mentioned stuff that happened on that tour. Was that your first foray into an active tour?
Yeah. First operational one. Yeah. First and last, actually. We arrived in a field in Lipa with our vehicles. And they said, "There's a load of tents. Put them up. The engineers will be along in a day or two to put your ablutions in." And that was it. There was no camp.
Nah.
That they gave us a field, and it just so happened to be co-located with a couple of helicopter refueling stations that were a couple of 100 yards away, and it coincidentally was. Oh God, I'm really sure. Gorny Vakuf in between Gorny Vakuf and Split on the and then Sarajevo was on the other route triangle, route square, all this kind of stuff. I don't know.
I think I know where you mean. It was near so you come off. No, that was Route Diamond through the mountains where there was an engineer camp.
Well, again, I was co-located with the Recce Mex, so every time that a Land Rover, somebody was driving 12 hours straight. Working time directive. I hope you're listening. But somebody was driving 12 hours straight and they just drove off the edge of a cliff. Guess what? The recce mechs would go out and start pulling them, winching them back in. So those routes were ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
They were fucking scary.
And it was our responsibility as logistics to take stuff from Split all the way across these really treacherous routes, all the way into Sarajevo, which is where all the fighting was happening. But so anyway, that was the larger point. I can't even remember where I was going after that, actually. But, yes, that's where I was going with this. The logic of the British Army. So, at the 4-month point, I know that's an oxymoron.
I was going to say, how long is this podcast?
At the 4-month point, the UN was changing over to NATO.
Yep.
So our guys were told, okay, you can send 50% back. We only need 50% because we don't need that many United Nations, although we only need 50% for NATO. So in their infinite wisdom, they decided that all the single guys would be sent home and all the married guys would be held back over Christmas and New Year and everything else. And that just did not make sense to me. And this is what I'm talking about the uneducated guys making the decisions. And if I spent a Christmas away from my family, you're going to spend a Christmas away from your family. Why? And it really frustrated me. So I got to, I'm still only about 11 stone dripping wet, but I got together with a few of the other singlies, and we all went to the OC and went, right, okay, we're volunteering to stay on. We've got nothing to go home to other than a block and a piss up in the local pub in Aldershot. Why can't we stay back? We officially volunteer to stay back. Quite frankly, we wanted the second medal as well, but we volunteer. Why don't you send those married guys back to their kids? And they did. And we all stayed on, and we had a whale of a time, by the way. And it was -40 with wind chill in Bosnia. Yeah. It was horrible. Norwegian burners were the best thing in my life, and Army issue sleeping bags were the only things that saved you. If you went outside the tent for a piss, it'd be frozen by the time it hit the floor. That kind of temperature. But the satisfaction of sending that guy, Gary Parker, if you're listening, God bless you. I sent him home. I took his place. He went home to his kids. And that's one of the proudest things that I can say that I've done, because I sent him home and I stayed so that he could do what he did, and I did what I did.
Yeah,
he only got
it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, you'll get the guys who are saying, "Well, no, we're all equal." Pads get treated better, this, that, and the other, and blah blah blah. But no, there's time and a place, and if you can, try and keep families together if you can. Really, I spent enough time away from my family. I think they were quite glad, actually. My family, looking back, they didn't like when I come on.
But do you know what? The army is no different to a normal working environment, though. If you haven't got a happy workforce, correct, then you haven't got what are you trying to achieve by making everybody unhappy? All you're doing is you're trying to further reinforce your discipline and your control over people. We get that. We're in the army. You don't need to keep on doing that. We understand. We signed the oath of allegiance. You're in control. However, at times you can be compassionate as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe
I've been quite lucky.
Maybe I'm on the wrong page here. I don't know.
No. I get exactly what you're saying. I think I've been quite lucky that really, in reality, I've been in some good units, and on the most, that sort of thing would happen. They would take into consideration, But there's some people, you're right, some people are complete thundercunts, and they will just be out there to progress their own career. That's the thing. You get career soldiers who don't think of other people. I mean, that's going to happen in any job. It's not just the army. That happens in any job.
You're right.
People who are just that. But it seems more, because the army's different, it's a way of life. It's not just a job. The military,
they use that as an excuse to just behave the way that they want to, with arbitrary control, and they're not going to be taken to task for how they treat other people because they're in the army. They're almost ring-fenced from, you can do what you want. You're bulletproof. You're invincible. You can effectively do what you want to other people, and that's wrong.
It is wrong, but it happens, And there's plenty of guys out there that did that.
I'm here, Frankie. I'm here to represent the guys who did shall I say, only 7 years. It's still a large percentage of your life, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I'm here to represent those guys who only did 7 or 8 years or whatever it is of their life, because we get picked on by the boys that did 22. Oh, you're not man enough.
Yeah.
You know, you did. Yeah, you're pointing at me on the screen. You're not man enough to do the full 22. When I signed off after 7 years because I felt as though I was better than what I was doing, and
Right.
I felt as though I could achieve more in life than what I was doing. But that final year of the army, because you've got to give a year's notice under open engagement. That final year was probably the hardest of all the years that I did when I was in. Basic training, I look back on quite fondly. Brilliant friends, made me to the person that I am. The 9 months that I spent in Bosnia, the bonding that I had was phenomenal, and the life lessons that I had from that. But that final year, when everybody in my unit knew that I'd signed off, they all went, he's not man enough. He can't handle the full 22. In reality, I thought I was the stronger person there because I'd stepped up and I said, I made the decision to not continue here. All of you lot, you're just as unhappy as me, but you haven't got the bollocks to sign off. You know, so I felt an awful lot of empowerment from that. But the sad thing is that in that final year, when everybody else was going off on big fancy sporting trips, you know, across Europe and enjoying themselves, and you know, a few of them went off adventure training in the US for 4 weeks. I mean, who signed that off? I don't know. But guess who was back doing duty driver?
Yeah.
Guess who was back doing every single Christmas duty and Easter duty and summer duty when everyone was at, yeah, good old Phill. Yeah, he'll do it. Don't worry, because he's in his final year. And that was a really, really tough year to do.
I've seen that so many times. And I'll admit, I'm probably part guilty of being of that ilk that didn't look. Right, I'll say it as it is. Fucking spade's a spade. Somebody signs off, lost interest in him. You know, it wasn't until later on when I was working with like the career management office that I would then see the other side of it. Like everyone's guilty. You'd see someone would sign off, and as far as you were concerned, he'd lost interest in whatever, you know. And the lads, like I bet when you signed off, your mates were all like, "Fucking nice one," you know, because we were all like that. One of the guys had signed off when I was a young lad. Who were like, "Oh, nice one, mate. Fucking know what you're going to do." Blah blah blah. And you were chuffed for him. He took that step. He had the balls to do it. You know, because it is quite a scary thing. I was married.
Frankie, I was unique in this instance because I signed off knowing full well I was just about to buy a pub in Aldershot. I'd got an inheritance from my grandma, who I said that died, and I was going to invest it in a pub in Aldershot that just so happened to be our regiment's pub. So I was going to buy our regiment's pub. So not many people wanted to get on the other side of me. The only people who gave me these extra duties are the people who didn't go out and were probably the downtrodden pads that weren't going to come in my pub anyway. But everyone else, they were rather nice to me.
But you do get it though that when someone signed off, the kind of the unit almost washes their hands of them. They don't offer them any, and guys suffer with that, and they find it hard to deal with that and to transition. Not everyone,
To
a lot of guys have signed off and they've gone.
To reverse that, Frankie, I get it as well. What's the point in further investing in me if I've signed off? No point investing in my friendship, no point investing in my training or my future if I'm going to leave you in a few months' time and I'm voluntarily doing that. So I get that, but there is a humanity involved here as well, and there's no need to be nasty.
But there's also the side of it that says you've got to make sure that guy's okay for getting out. The transition from being in the military to then becoming a civilian. Like you say, you only did 7 years. It's still a long time. You've still got part institutionalized. I did 27, and when I was due to leave the army, I wouldn't say I was scared, but I was, even though I knew it was my time and I had to go, there was no way I could stay in, whatever. and I had a job to go to, but I didn't have any housing. I was that one of them old weathered full screws who
You
didn't
didn't
plan
have to
for
pay
the
the
future.
bills, and
Yeah,
someone cooked for you all your life. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was married for 20 odd years in the army.
Okay.
But it was air cooked, and it was air paid all the bills.
Same thing.
Yeah,
You
same
have your
thing.
own cookhouse.
But we lived behind the wire. We lived on a camp for years and years and years and years. And
Yeah.
then when we were looking forward to the new chapter in our lives and leaving and seeing where it would go, but it was still scary. But even then, after all the service I'd done, the kind of the regiment, like, well, all right, see ya. I didn't get a leaving due. I didn't get fucking anything like that. It was just like I was sent home on gardening leave and forgot about. And that happens to a lot of people, and it's a bad way of doing it.
Frankie, I'll give you a comparison. Okay, my wife's parents live in San Jose in California. We go over there a couple of times a year. What the US do for their veterans is unbelievable. I've been away a lot of times this year on business and stuff, and I've been over to the US. The veterans proudly wear hats that say, "I am a US veteran." They have their doors opened for them. They never buy a drink in a bar. They get free access to everywhere they go. However, we are almost laughed at, smirked at, if we wear our regimental T-shirts out. There's a difference between the two societies there.
Yeah, very much so.
I drove past what is effectively a town or a village, and as I drove past, there was a sign that just said Veterans Village, and it was a free to live village that had been purpose built for anybody who had served, so that they could spend time with their own kind of people, rent free, just outside of San Jose, and they were there, and they were looked after regardless of how long they'd served. Now, how polar opposite is that of our boys that are living in street, in doorways and no benefits, and are seen as almost an embarrassment to society. It's absolutely polar opposite of what it should be. Maybe we haven't got the budget that the US has, but there's no excuse for not trying.
I mean, even when we were serving, you were almost a third class citizen. I've come across that myself. It was hard to get this. It was hard to get, get a fucking bank loan, get, whatever, anything like that, get credit, get, to buy a settee. Or what's your occupation? Armed forces. Oh, you've got no chance. Type of thing. And yeah, you're right. I think the UK treats its veterans the better than they were, because I think it was, I wouldn't say it was good for a while, but we were in the, because of Afghan and Iraq and stuff like, Royal, was it Wootton Bassett? Yeah, where they used to bring the, and you were on the news.
Now Royal Wootton Bassett, yeah.
So, we were on the news, we were in people's minds, we were in the newspapers, but it also goes back to, it just reverts to what it was.
But you only have to wind back a few years when you and I were in, Frankie, when if thanks to the IRA, thanks very much, chaps, but if I wanted to go down the bank to draw £20 out at lunchtime, I had to get changed out my uniform and go down anonymously to the bank and then come back and then get changed into my uniform for my afternoon at work. I was proud to wear that uniform. I wanted to go home on leave wearing my uniform, so all my friends, my family could see me proudly wearing my uniform. Couldn't do it. They took that privilege away from me. And I know that's a set of circumstances, of course I do. But, present day, you've got guys walking around the streets in their uniform, and every single one of them I look at, and I try and give the acknowledgement, the nod, as if to say, I was in as well, mate. I don't know how they get that nod, but, at least
that's, as soon as you meet someone else and you know they're a squad, you go, I was in the army as well. Oh, right. And you, whoever with, you just go fucking off on a tangent.
Do you know the question?
Stuff.
What were you in?
Yeah.
That's the question, isn't it? What were you in? And
or you'll get someone who'll say to you, I was going to join the army. Well, fuck off then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was
You
in
didn't,
the
did you?
cadets once. Oh, were you? That's nice.
Oh, I've had that a few times.
I bought an
So I mean,
action
that
one.
leads us lovely on to like why you left. So, what was it like actually stepping out the gate for you then?
After that year that I've just talked about of duty driver and endless duties and all that kind of, I was bloody relieved, mate. The symbolism of handing in that MOD 90 was actually really quite big for me. And I still have nightmares now that I am still in the army and I keep on trying to give this MOD 90 back and nobody will take it off me. Like when you're trying to walk, you're trying to run down the street, in your dreams, you're trying to run down the street, but it feels like you're running in treacle, or you're trying to hit someone really hard, but your fist is going so slow, like in slow motion, those kind of dreams. It's like, it's the MOD 90 is in my hand and nobody will take it off me. It's as though nobody will allow me to leave. Those are those sort of recurring dreams that I have. I won't
That's a
say
weird
nightmares,
one.
but
That.
dreams.
I
So
think that you get one there. Look
walking out the
into.
gates was great. Although, do you remember I said that I joined on April Fool's Day?
Yeah.
I left on Friday the 13th.
Fucking hell.
I know. Friday the 13th of November. And then the following day, I then started my new job. So I had no separation. I had no stop. Thankfully, I had 2 wages coming in for 3 months until I officially left in the January. But yeah, that was. So I had no transition at all. It was straight from one straight into the other. And I wanted to do that because I thought I might with my character as I knew it. If I started getting lazy, I'd become lazier and lazier and lazier. So I knew I had to jump on the next vehicle that was coming along to prevent myself from becoming that lazy individual that I was.
And that was running the pub.
Well, no, I went to a student union bar first in Twickenham.
Then the rope's there.
I did that for about 12 months, until the pub's license became available. So yeah, I spent 12 months running a student union bar in Twickenham at the age of 25. That was quite an experience. I'll give you that. It was an amazing experience. I loved it because I had my licensing qualifications, which I couldn't have got the job without, and it was literally just a holding job until the pub became available. Don't ever, is that advice for your kids that's listening, don't ever buy a pub. Because within 12 months it will make you officially bankrupt, which is what it made me. I was a proud man, but it made me bankrupt. I had to go to the courts. I had to say I've got no money and I owe an awful lot. I thought it was a dream. It turned into a nightmare. It was awful. Yeah, but it's one of those things that you live through.
So what was after the pub for you then?
I went through a variety of, having an HGV license, it's like having a pension for life. You can always fall back on it. So once I left the pub, what trades did I have? I'll go off and do a bit of driving. I joined a local driving agency, recruitment company. They found me a couple of weeks' work. And then, because I used to go in on a Friday afternoon and I'd hand my timesheet in and I'd have a flirt with the girls in the office, that kind of thing. A couple of months into it, they said, do you know what? Someone's on holiday next week. Why don't you come in here? We'll pay you the same as we do a driver. You just come and sit behind the desk and answer the phones and, do what we normally do. We just need a bit of cover in the office. So I went from driver to recruitment consultant, overnight. I thought, I'll just put a shirt on and answer a few phones, and it's better than dragging a few cages around the back of a flatbed. So I thought I'd do that, and within that week, I found something. I found something in me that was sales, because all I was doing was literally being paid for talking and smiling. That's all I was doing. It's easy, isn't it? I'm not digging holes in the road in the rain for 12 hours a day. I was just talking and smiling. And the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it, and the more successful I became. So I then got offered a full-time job with the agency. I went through 2 or 3 different agencies being headhunted because I enjoyed what I did. And then a friend approached me and said, do you know what? You're earning so much money for other people. Why don't you go out and do it yourself? That's what I did. I started my own agency in 2003 and turned that into £1 million business within 5-6 years.
Wow.
It was great. I really, really enjoyed it. There was a recession in 2008, 2009, which kind of killed it. But I was lucky enough to sell it before it became a problem. I took those skills on. I hope you're all keeping up. I took those skills on, and then once I'd sold the business, didn't quite have enough to retire on, but became a transport manager. So the transport thing goes all the way through, the drive-in transport. One of my customers, as I was selling the business, said, "You know what, we're looking for a new transport manager. Do you fancy giving it a go?" And I said, "Well, I know a little bit about transport and logistics, but I haven't got a clue about management. But yeah, I'll give it a go." And 8 years later, I was there, and it was fantastic. I went from there, and then I went back into recruitment. That company closed, and I went back into recruitment. Something that my mum always told me, do more of what you're good at, and I always felt as though I was good at talking to people and building relationships, that kind of thing. So yeah, I went back into recruitment, and thankfully for 2 years on the trot, I was the highest performing sales guy in the UK in my industry for what I did. We're now back up to almost present day. My wife is a ridiculously successful Instagram coach, an online coach, and mentor. And this time last year, we both gave up our corporate jobs to go in full in on what she does. She did $1 million in her first year. We're not doing, it's not as if you've got to buy stock to sell stock. This is literally her.
You've got to sell yourself, yeah.
It sounds great, but I'm a glorified chef and bottle washer, and look after the kids and pay the bills and do some very unglamorous stuff in terms of uploading videos and stuff. But I do get to play a lot of golf, Frankie. I've got to be honest. I play a lot of golf. My handicap has come down dramatically this year. That's my passion. If you listen to my podcast, it tells you how golf has saved my life. I don't want to trivialize that.
Right.
But golf has saved my life. I got to a point a few years ago when I asked myself, what are you offering to life? What net gain are you getting out of life? Your kids are grown up and lovely and successful, very beautiful. You've done all the jobs, you've done all the things. You're now here. What's the point? That phrase, what's the point? What am I doing this for? Why am I going through the motions? Why am I bothering? Because every day's bloody hard work. I'm carrying more and more weight, more and more baggage. I've got all of these thoughts going on in my head. Why don't I just stop it all? Because that'll just do everyone a favour, won't it? And that's where I found myself. I was doing this sales job. I was sat in a car park. I was that guy that you see, when you're on your way into Tesco and you see a bloke sat in his driver's seat and he's thrown his head back and he's got his eyes closed and you think, oh, I wonder what he's doing. Yeah, that was me. I was thinking, what's the fucking point? What am I doing here? What purpose have I got in life? And coincidentally, the same night, when I had those really, really dark thoughts, and I nearly acted on what I'm talking about here. I went home and my wife said, and we never do this, she said, well, let's watch a film. It's almost comedy timing, really. And she said, let's watch a film. And we started watching A Star Is Born. Have you seen that?
I've not watched it yet, no.
No? Okay. So it's a film with Lady Gaga and the bloke from The Hangover, Bradley Cooper, I think he's called. Not Bradley Walsh. He's on the show.
When you said that, I thought Walsh in my head. I thought, I've stopped that one.
Everybody does that. Everybody does. But here's where it gets interesting. And I'm replaying my podcast when I say this now. The main character that Bradley Cooper plays, he took his own life in the film, and in a very slow motiony kind of way. It's almost as though somebody was writing the script in front of me for what I was capable of, what I could do. I was taking notes ridiculously, in my mind. I was like, okay, so if you do that, then you do that. And then and it was almost legitimizing the acts of, okay, yeah, that's my way out. But right at the end of the film, my wife spotted something in me. She spotted that there was a trend behind my eyes that wasn't consistent with what was happening before, and she said, I was stood at the back door having a cigarette when I used to smoke, and she went, "This is different. This is a different Phill. What's going on?" And it's at that point I spoke. It's at that point I opened my mouth, and I started talking, and it was at that point that it felt like somebody was taking their foot off my throat. And it became easier. With every word that poured out of my mouth, it became easier and easier and easier. And I was talking, and I was waffling bollocks like I am now. And it was just coming out. And I couldn't wait to get the next word out. And she was listening, and she was attentive. And right at the end of it, even though I was exhausted, I went, "Oh, fuck, that feels better.
Yeah.
Oh, that feels so good." And that weight that I was talking about that was on my shoulders was lifting. And my shoulders were rising, and I felt as though I was capable of more because of what I'd done. But it was all because I'd opened my mouth that it all became clearer. And I see so many guys out there now that are holding it all in. It's like a vacuum. And if only somebody would take the cork out of the champagne bottle of these guys, they'd realise how easy it is just to open up. Just like you've done, Frankie, and just like I'm doing. And I don't mind being absolutely brutally honest with everybody when I say, this is me, this is what I've been through. I don't mind telling you anything about my inside lead measurement or how many times I go for a shit a day. I don't mind who I tell and what I tell because it's who I am. But if everybody else can do that, my God, life becomes a lot easier when you're not this vacuum-packed person in your head that you think you are. Oh my God, it becomes easier.
I mean, I agree.
Amen.
Totally agree. I totally agree because, like we mentioned before, that when I sat in front of the doctor and she sat there, looked at me and went, "Right, what's going on then?" And for 5-10 minutes, I sat there in silence, couldn't speak because I didn't know the first sentence. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to I didn't know how to articulate what I wanted to say. So
how did you feel once that first word poured out your mouth, though?
I don't know what it was. I don't know what the first sentence was, but the only thing I remember is her looking at a watch because it was a 40-minute session. She looked at a watch twice, and she just went, "Feel better?" I said, "What happened?" So I don't know. You know, it just went, "Blah."
Yes.
And it carried on. It went. I was out of breath in points of it and stuff like that. But it fucked me out. I felt so good after it. And weirdly, the podcast helps me do that as well. Sometimes I come off a podcast talking to people where I've almost spoke as much as they have, and that's my therapy. I've been greedy. I was stealing it from
wrong with that.
And some of the guys I've spoke to have been like yourself. They've been quite knowledgeable on the subjects that they're talking about, and a few of them have been very motivational. Let's say that even that. I remember doing one and coming off a podcast with this guy, and I felt I was high as a kite. I was that motivated. I went and washed my dishes, which was quite a feat for me then. They'd been there a week.
Man from the northeast doing his own dishes.
Yeah, but I was in that. I was at the bottom of the trough. You do that. I was right at the bottom. I was with the whale shit at the time, and I was considering sacking doing the podcast and everything. I was just on the downer on myself, and I had that podcast with him, and it was months and months ago, and I just felt so good after it. But because we both had like a conversation like where we were both bouncing off each other and stuff like that, that I felt great, and it made me want to keep on doing this, and then inviting more people on, not just the guys who have, a lot of the ones I've done early on are people who are new, and the easy people to grab hold of, and then find people like yourself. I see them on social media and stuff, and I go, right, they'll be interesting. I want them on, and I try to keep it military themed, but I'm pushing towards as well. I might be, I'm gonna have to try and expand that. And
one of the things that saved me, Frankie, I referred to it before. If it makes the edit, then it's relevant. Is that when I'd given up smoking, I was saving a tenner a day. That's significant money.
Yeah.
But my wife told me that money will not be absorbed into the normal daily or weekly bills. You've got to constantly, perpetually reward yourself with the effort that you're putting in by not smoking. So what are you going to use that money for? And my passion always has been and always will be golf. There's a there's a local club to me that I previously was a member of, couldn't afford, and guess what? I can now. And she said, if that's what this was soon after the whole Star is Born thing and the dark thoughts and the chat by the back door. And she said, if that's what's going to spark your flame, if that's going to get you going, then go and join. Go and join. I'll fully support you. If you want to play every day, you play every day, but I will support you in that. And that was my saviour. That because it wasn't just golf. I met a community of guys that felt as close to the barrack room as it did. There's banter, there's WhatsApp groups. We're all taking the mickey out of each other. On a Saturday afternoon, we're all sat there after a round, and we're all taking the mickey out of each other. And so it was great, and it was as close a replica as I could get to that feeling that I was missing. I then went on to volunteer to become the organizer of that group, and now if you fast forward 2 or 3 years, I'm actually a director of Army Golf Club Limited, the club that I'm a member of. I'm part of the management group where I'm making all these incredibly important decisions on behalf of the club for the next 50 odd years and stuff. So it ignited me, and I was running around in the dark, scissors in front of me. Someone was going to get hurt. However, I found a direction in life. Someone flicked the switch on, and the light came on, and I went, yeah, this is what I need. This is what I need in my life. I found it. So whether it's fishing or maggot drowning or whatever you do, or whether it's riding around on motorbikes, endangering badgers, whatever you want to do, just find that passion. If you're feeling lost in life, go and do more of what you do. My mum told me, do more of what you're good at.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely right. If golf is your thing, go and play golf. If fishing is your thing, go and fish. If taking Volkswagen Beetles apart and putting them back together again, if that's your thing, do more of it. Because if you're sat in your pants watching Loose Women every afternoon, that's not helping you at all. Because you're probably on your third can of Special Brew by then. If you get yourself out there and you find a community and you go and do it, it'll engage you. And honestly, it's your saviour. It really is, and it gives you a purpose in life.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying about myself, doing this. I mean, I'll admit, I have sat in my underpants and done a podcast with just my T-shirt on.
We've all done that, mate.
I was going to say, I won't say who it was with, though, but I did tell them.
I'm probably on my 4th beer now, chatting to you. Well, this is going on for some time.
Yeah, I've had one where I went through 2 bottles of wine. That was quite good. That was a lot. So what got you going on to doing your own podcast then? And obviously, I've got you on because of the podcast, and obviously your military connection as well. And I'll be putting links to your podcast in the show notes for this and sharing it on my Facebook and things like that as well. So try and I don't know, advertise for everyone, whatever they want to call it, or whatever. So what was the embryo of that?
I referred earlier that my wife became really successful in what she did, and she's still doing now. You might even hear in the background that she's, what time is it now? 9:45 at night, and she's still teaching in the background. She became so successful that I managed to give up my job. So she hypothetically said one day, even before all of this, if you had no job, what would you do? And I said to her, without even thinking out too deeply about this, I said, I'd probably want to volunteer for the Samaritans or something like that. I feel as though I can add value to that. Because if we go back to lockdown, I'd had 2 or 3 friends that had actually phoned me and said, I'm feeling really low. I'm sat on the end of a ledge. One particular friend back in Blackpool sat on the end of a pier with a bottle of wine in front of me at 9:30 in the morning, say something that will convince me not to do this. And I went, wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So I waffled a load of bollocks at him, and thankfully it saved him. in the job that I was in recruitment, I built relationships with drivers, and there was another 2 drivers that I spoke to, and they were really quite emotional, and I had to talk them off the ledge, metaphorically. It was at that point I thought, do you know what? I can actually add value to this. If I've been reasonably successful in speaking to these people, maybe I've got a skill or an aptitude that actually might help people. So if we wind back to what my wife was saying, what would you do if you didn't have a job? I found myself being retired by my wife, even though she keeps me busy, believe me. And she said, the Samaritans is great, but what about if you launched a podcast, reaching out to the people that you resonate with, that that might want to listen to you? You could talk to a much larger audience and maybe have a bigger impact through a podcast than you would on a one-to-one through Samaritans. I'd love to do Samaritans. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. But the podcast might be even more impactful. So why don't you try it? And that was the nucleus. That's what started all of this. I eventually, it's been 6 months in the making. I say 6 months in the making. I'm a lazy bugger, right? So it took me 6 months to actually get my arse into gear and get a microphone in front of me and then do it. But once I did it, I then got the addiction for it. And I've now done 3. We've got nearly 400 downloads, 19 different countries, 142 different cities or territories. And I've actually had over 30 guys reach out to me. Some of the guys I know, some of them I don't. They've messaged me, they've phoned me direct. This has got legs. This, as I've said in one of the podcasts, there's a fucking epidemic out there of men's mental health, and it's rife. And I don't think enough is being done. There's a hell of a lot being done, and a hell of a lot of people are doing some brilliant work. I've actually partnered up with Mind, MIND, the charity, and also a wonderful guy called Steve Whittle, who's in charge of his own charity called Tough to Talk. He's an ex-military guy, and he started his own charity. And it's got so big, he doesn't know what to do with it. He's just trying to do as well as he can. So we've partnered up so that we can publicise each other, just like we're doing as well, Frankie, in spreading the word and saying it's okay to talk. It's okay to not be okay. Let's just have a chat. This is a peer-to-peer talk. We're all blokes. We've all done daft stuff. And if I can empathise with you by telling you how daft I've been in the past, that might just open the door to you saying, do you know what, I've been that daft. And then we engage in conversation from there, and we can talk along. And even if you don't want to talk, or you just send me a message or something, the amount of people that have just sent me a message, a guy I was in primary school with, so we're now talking 42 years ago, that was a friend on Facebook with, he sent me a message and he just said, yeah, great podcast. Now, I knew there was something behind that. He's not just saying great podcast. He's not reviewing it. Yeah. He's reaching out. The bloke's reaching out. So I then messaged him back. Then we got into conversation. We had a little chat on the phone, and it goes from there. What I can't do myself is absorb all of that. You'll notice yourself, Frankie. You can't take all of that on your own shoulders. You have to signpost these people to the right places. I'm not qualified. I could be seen as a loose cannon in this area in terms of handing out advice. But what I can do is I can signpost people to the right place. In the meantime, before that signposting, I can say some very nice, comforting things based on experience, and that'll make them feel a little bit better whilst I signpost, and then you go and get the proper help. That's kind of all I wanted to do, as well as get an OBE and get some VIP tickets to Daryl Hall and John Oates.
I tell you what, I wouldn't mind actually.
What, the OBE or Daryl Hall and John Oates?
No, Daryl Hall and John Oates. Did I just admit that? Yeah. No.
It's gone live.
Yes, fucking hell. No, I'll listen to anything. I mean, I've got to commend you on what you're doing. Getting people reaching out to you after just a couple of podcasts like that is in my mind phenomenal. I don't get many people reaching out to me, in all honesty. So I'll just like to say, like, subscribe. Come on, you bastards. But I don't do it for My podcast is a very different thing to yours. It's, or is it? Is it very similar? I'm getting people on talking and getting them to share their stories so that other people can listen to, and they can remember the times that they had and stuff like that.
Frankie, I commend you for what you do, because you're doing it and you're persistent at it, and you might not even realise the impact you're having on people's lives, because very rarely will you have anybody saying great podcast that they'll listen to it and then they become silent behind it. That doesn't mean that they haven't acknowledged it.
I understand that. I do it myself. I understand that.
But what we need to do collectively is we're effectively operating within our own circles. Okay, I've got friends, you've got friends, and they may pass them on. But it's the people beyond that circle that we need to reach out to, because there might be a friend of ours who's got a friend, and they're the ones that need to listen to that podcast to get some kind of advice. That person that's passing that on or forwarding it on or sharing it might not even know that person needs that help. But by sharing it, you're offering it to somebody who you don't even know needs that help, but might need that help. And that's absolutely crucial. So the more we can expand these, not ever decreasing circles, but ever increasing circles, the more we can do that along the ripples of the pond all the way to the end, the more we can help people. Do you get that?
Yeah, no, I get that totally. And I do know for a fact that there's more people than just ex-squaddies and that listen to mine. And I have had comments that no one's come up to me and said, your podcast helped me. Your podcast saved my life. Or whatever. That's never going to happen. That's not what this is about. But I do know that even without the military connotations of it, it has reached people. And because some of the people who comment on some things now and again, or have sent me a message, they've got nothing to do with the military. I've had people say to us, "Oh, I didn't know you just went through this," or "I didn't know that happened." We're giving or I'm trying to give not just veterans a chance to remember what was going on, or their own times, or getting other veterans to think about, "Oh yeah, I remember that." "Oh, that was shit," "Oh, that was good," or whatever. But it's also showing people who aren't in our community that this is what it was like, and it's not all fucking, sweetness and rainbows. It's not all the SAS. It's not all the paras, the commandos, the Glory Alley stuff. Just normal people have all got a story, and sometimes they're fucking hilarious. Sometimes they're sad. Sometimes they're great. But
something that you might not even realise, or an awful lot of people out there might not realise, is that you might be reaching out to those military circles. But what about the person that's assisting that person that used to be military, or that child that's supporting the father or the mother that used to be in the military? It's those secondary and tertiary elements that we're talking about, the support groups. Because it might not be just one squaddy listening to another squaddy, or an ex-squaddy listening to another ex-squaddy. It might be the wife of an ex-squaddy that's listening to this, that's looking for some help or solution or advice. It might be those people. So you're reaching out to them. And it's at that point that you then start moving beyond that circle. I've got, 1,000 people that follow me on Facebook who look at me, I'm famous. It's not. It's just because I'm very old and I'm from various places. All I'm doing is I'm basically preaching to those people. I need those people to then pass it on to their people, and then their people to pass it on to their people. The next thing you know, you've got 1 million people listening to something that might be or might not be valuable, and only then will we get the message out.
Yeah, true. Right, it's been 1 hour and 40 minutes. I think we've come to the end. We've got to the end of your story. We're up to date anyway.
I haven't even started yet, Frankie.
Yeah. Hey, we can always come back. And honestly, thanks for coming on and sharing your story.
Pleasure.
And the information you've given out for your podcast. I'll get that shared with mine, and hopefully get you some more listeners, and hopefully people find it more beneficial than listening to me just rabbiting on.
If you're searching for it, you're looking for Guys Talking. The words talking has got an apostrophe rather than a G at the end, and it's not Guy Stalking if you're listening from front to back. You'll find it on Spotify. You'll find it on Apple Podcasts. If you search for me on Facebook, you'll find me with Phill with 2 L's, played by mother, not me. Phill Barwise, that's Barwise. You might have heard I was a publican in the past, and my surname is Barwise. Yeah, that's very funny. You'll find me on Instagram, Phill with 2 L's _Barwise. If you listened all the way through to the end, there's probably a high probability that you're going to follow me. So please do that, and you'll find all the links to the podcast.
Right. Thanks very much for coming on. I'll stop it here then. Right. Oh, I've lost my mouse. There we go. Stop. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I enjoyed recording it. If you could just hit the like button, and also if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell, that'd be great, because it'll help the channel grow. The more people will see it, the bigger it'll get, and the more guests I can get on, and the more people I can talk to. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, like I said. Look forward to the next one. Hopefully it'll be out next week as normal. Bye-bye now.